Good afternoon. My name is Jordan Yotis, and I'm the Chief Communications Officer here at the Paulding County Sheriff's Office. Today we're going to provide you with an in-depth overview of the death investigation of Heather Turner. Today you'll hear from several speakers, one of them being Sheriff Ashley Henson, Captain Mike Hill from our cold case unit, as well as Eddie Herman, one of our cold case analysts. It's important to note that some of the stuff that you're going to see today may be a distraction or some people may just not want to look at it, so viewer discretion is definitely advised with some of the slides that you're going to see today. We will take questions at the end of this news conference. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff Ashley Henson. Sheriff.
Good afternoon, Paulding County. Good afternoon to our community. My name is Ashley Henson. I am the Sheriff of Paulding County, and today is a day that I've been waiting on personally for 8.5 years, as many of you have in the community. Today is the day that we provide our community and the family of Heather Turner with a resolution in her death investigation. One of the promises that I ran on in 2024 was providing a resolution to the death investigation of Heather Turner, and today it happens. Another was the creation of a cold case unit, and that is exactly what we've done. And as a result of that creation, we have a resolution in her death investigation. We'll talk more about that cold case unit here in a moment. This case has been perpetuated by myths, by inaccuracies, by falsities, and today we clear every single one of those up. You're going to hear the facts as they occurred on May the 4th, 2017. And that's one of the things that has not changed throughout the entirety of this incident. The facts have remained the same, and today our citizens will learn the facts. Today we're going to be providing an overview into what happened that day. We are going to be talking about the incident, what happened that day, and all the situations involved with that incident, and why it took as long as it took. Today, once we are done, you will understand the facts of what happened on May the 4th, 2017. Why has it taken so long to get here? Well, I can answer for 13 months of that. I began being the sheriff in Paulding County on January 1st of 2025, as I stated earlier. Since that time, we created a cold case unit which has been dedicated to working on Heather's case as well as several other old cold cases. So I want to talk about some of the partners that got us to where we are today. Certainly the men and women of the Paulding County Sheriff's Office. I can't tell you how voluminous this case is. There are volumes after volumes after volumes of case files on this case. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, not only their special agents, but the Office of the Medical Examiner, their forensic pathologists. The GBI has been a fantastic partner since nearly the beginning of this investigation. Our District Attorney's Office, District Attorney Lane, since he came into office, he and I have been talking about this case. When I got elected, one of the first things I told him was, we've got to get to work on the Turner case. And he was committed and we were committed. And as a result of that partnership, we have the resolution today. And then finally, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED. They are essentially the state investigative agency for South Carolina, and we'll talk about what their involvement was in this case. And many of the podcasters and the folks online have said, well, why don't you get the FBI to get involved? Well, guess what? I asked them. This is not in the purview of the FBI. So I want to talk about our cold case unit and how we got to where we are today. Captain Mike Hill, who has over 28 years of experience in law enforcement, leads our cold case unit. You're going to hear from him first in just a moment. Next, you're going to hear from retired Sergeant Eddie Herman of the Cobb County Police Department with over 40 years of law enforcement experience. Eddie came in with an unbiased approach about the entirety of this incident. He had no knowledge of what took place, and he came in and looked at the case. Lieutenant Pat Banks, who works with the Sheriff's Office, who is over our intelligence unit, looked at this case. He's got over 40 years of law enforcement experience. He had no knowledge of this case either. So with Lieutenant Banks and Mr. Herman coming together, they were able to look at this case and dive into it and look at every single piece of evidence, every single page in the report, and everything that involves this case. We're going to let you hear from them in just a moment. But next, I think it's important to note why we're here. We're here because of the death of Heather Turner. Heather was a wife, she was a mother, and she was a daughter, and she was a friend to many, and she was 35 years old when she died. And today, we're going to talk about the day that Heather died. So I want to walk you through a timeline of events that took place on May the 4th, 2017. These are accurate facts. These are not things that you might have seen on the internet. Maybe you heard them here or there. These are the facts of the case as they have never been described before. And before I begin, I want to make sure that everyone knows that when I took office, we pledged to have a level of transparency never seen before, and this is part of that pledge. So let's talk about the timeline of events from May the 4th, 2017. So 4 calls were made to the parents of Andy Turner beginning at 5:57 a.m. on May the 4th, 2017. At 5:59 a.m. and 11 seconds, Andy Turner made contact with his parents, who lived about 5 to 6 miles away. At 5:59 and 47 seconds a.m., Andy Turner calls 911 and speaks with an operator who ultimately instructs him to begin CPR. At 6:10 a.m., Andy states on the 911 call he needs to turn off the shower so he can hear. At 6:11, Andy's parents are heard on the 911 call. At 6:13 a.m., the first deputy arrives on scene at the Turner residence. At 6:16 a.m., fire rescue arrives on the scene. At 6:19 a.m., the coroner was requested to respond to the scene. And at 6:56 a.m., the coroner arrives on scene. At 7:25 a.m., Andy Turner signs a consent to search of the residence. And at 7:30 a.m., a crime scene unit is requested. At 10 a.m., the scene is released about 3 hours and 47 minutes later. So this is one of the things that we learned in this case and then some cases that have occurred in the past year, is that we changed our protocol in the way we process crime scenes. We now photograph more thoroughly. We actually also include a videography of the scene itself, so we have a more exact and accurate representation of what the scene entails. We've learned a lot since this case took place. So let's talk about some more facts of the case. This is the incident report that was taken on May the 4th, 2017 by our deputy. So the first thing that we've heard out in the world of podcasts and online is that Heather died at 5:30 a.m. and Andy called at 6 a.m. Okay? So that's what we're going to explain first. So the call was made at 6 a.m. In law enforcement report writing, we utilize call bracketing. And so typically what we do is we back up from the time of the call, typically 30 minutes prior to the time of the call, and then the ending time is the time that we responded on scene where we know in this situation where there's a death, 6:13 a.m., which is when the deputies responded on scene. So the 911 call was made at 6 a.m. The call bracketing allows for 30 minutes prior, which is 5:30 a.m. So it's important to note that the shot did not occur at 5:30 a.m. Something else that's important to note is in the report, the deputy noted that there was steam coming from the shower. If you can remember back to what I just said, on the 911 call, Andy indicates that at 6:10 a.m., he needs to turn off the shower. At 6:13 a.m., the deputy responds into the home and notes in his report that the bathroom appeared steamy, as if the shower or hot water had been running. This corroborates exactly what was stated on the 911 call by our deputies' findings when they arrived on scene. Another thing that was identified in the initial report is that a male, later identified as Andy, was seen holding a female, which is identified as Heather, on the floor. The deputy also indicated that when he arrived and observed Heather, there was a gunshot wound to the left side of her head, directly in front of her ear. At this point, I want to make sure everyone understands that there are going to be some images that you may see that may be graphic in nature. We'll put up a disclaimer, so please, if you don't want to see some of these images, please do not look at some of these images that we're going to post. But at this point, I want to bring up Captain Mike Hill, who is the commander of our cold case unit.
Thank you, Sheriff Henson. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Hill. I am a captain here with the Sheriff's Office here in Paulding. So what I would like to do is go through the scene and what our detectives encountered that morning first, and then I'll go into some other things here in just a few minutes. So as the timeline states, we were called to the scene by the Uniform Patrol Division based upon a person who was beyond help from a gunshot wound reported. So our crime scene detectives and our detectives responded to the scene. Now, on arrival, detectives and crime scene investigators, they requested consent to search for the residence. Mr. Andy Turner complied with these requests. He gave consent for the scene to be processed, and the process was begun. It is protocol for us, and this happened on this date, that our crime scene investigator began with photography from the outside of the scene moving in. So we're going to take a look at some of the scene photographs. And so when crime scene entered with their camera, photographing and documenting and memorializing the scene, they encountered a female, obviously beyond help and deceased, in the bathroom floor of the master bedroom on the first floor. Now, detectives also encountered a firearm in close proximity to the decedent, Heather, and there were towels about her person and under her person. So I'm going to talk about the gun for a second. So the weapon involved is a Smith & Wesson Model 642 airweight. This is a 5-shot stainless finished airweight revolver. So this gun is stainless finished again with a neoprene rubber grip. So the weapon is found to have 4 live unspent rounds and 1 spent casing. Now, detectives note that Heather is on her back, lying face up. There's obvious penetrating trauma to the left side of her head, so she's beyond help. So we're going to move on and take a look at some of the scene photographs. So there is blood spatter near her person, and so there is a linen closet door nearby, and so there is a very low projection of blood spatter on this door. So that's going to become important here in just a few minutes. So there is blood spatter there, and there are some other spatters noted in the photographs. So again, this blood spatter is low on the door, and this gives us an indication of the origin of said blood. So we're going to talk about that again in a few minutes. Now, photography is completed within the actual scene, which is the bathroom, and our crime scene detectives move to confer with Andy, and they request consent for gunshot residue, or GSR. He agrees, he gives written consent, and he submits samples to our crime scene investigator. So those are secured and stored as evidence. Now, our crime scene investigators, they memorialize the scene, and the coroner comes in, pronounces Heather deceased, and then Heather is removed from the scene. So at that time, the coroner arranges for an autopsy with the GBI. So we're going to take another look at some more evidence within this bathroom. So there is a notebook placed on top of a makeup kit at a vanity, which is later determined to be Heather's vanity. This notebook has some writings on an otherwise blank page. There are some words written on this. "I'm sorry, I love you" is the note written. Now, there is an ink pen within the spiral binding of this notebook. However, there is another ink pen that's silver and red in color on the opposite vanity near where Heather is found. So that is a description of the scene. I'm going to move into some other inaccuracies that have been perpetuated over the years, and I would like to clarify for the citizens. So many people have perpetuated a myth that Sheriff Gary Gullidge was on the scene. This is simply not true. A crime scene log was created when this incident occurred. Sheriff Gullidge was not at the scene. There have also been social media claims of a cover-up. We as detectives, we work upon fact and evidence. These things are documented. We commonly keep those things close to the vest. We keep or maintain the integrity of our investigations. But I can tell you that there is no cover-up, folks. There's also been accusations of certain people manipulating the crime scene before the first responders' arrival. So I'd like to go back to the bathroom photograph, if I could. And what I want to talk about is these claims of the scene being manipulated simply are not true. The photographs show everything in place. There's a notation in the deputy's report that Andy immediately directs our deputy to where the firearm is. The blood spatter cannot be moved. It's in place, and we're going to go back to that in just a few minutes. But what I want to say is that there's no evidence of manipulation of the scene. There's also been the perpetuation of Mr. Turner admitting to this murder on the 911 call. So we have actually listened to and reviewed this audio of this 911 call thousands of times. Our GBI counterparts have done the same, and we've actually had some other agencies do the same as well. And this is simply inaudible words or sorrow from Mr. Turner that we cannot discern to be any sort of confession. So I'd like to move over to some of the mentionings in the coroner's report and just compare and correlate that to the photographs. So the coroner's report cites that Heather's hair was wet from the shower. So earlier when I said that there's towels in and around Heather and under her, I want to go back to that. So the towel that's under Heather is dry. Now, based upon the type of wound that Heather suffered, her hair would be saturated from blood and cerebral fluid. We know that. But there is no indication that she actually went into the shower, and the photographs depict this. Now, other inaccuracies are that there appears to be an entrance wound on the right side. Heather went for autopsy. The medical examiner examined Heather in detail. She has an entrance wound on the left side, and we'll get deeper into those details in just a few minutes. But this is a right side entrance wound is not true. Possible exit on the left. Again, this is not true. The left trauma on the left side of Heather's head is in fact an entrance wound, and there is evidence to support that, and we'll get into that in further detail in just a few minutes. There was also mentionings of how a bullet could not be found. Well, we know through autopsy that the projectile was located and recovered at autopsy, so our medical examiner recovered this at autopsy. So we do, and we've always had the projectile that's been in evidence. So I'd like to move to the bathroom wall part. There was a mention in the coroner's report about a wall near the toilet appearing to be washed. So I'd like to mention a couple of things about that. This is in fact some type of beginnings of a painting project. This is not blood evidence, and our detectives and GBI agents went at a later date, and they did in fact run a luminol examination on this wall with negative results. So I want to also cover some inaccuracies that have been placed in some interviews, and we'll go ahead and just talk about those really quick. Again, there was mentionings from a funeral home employee who made mention that a bullet was never recovered. We know, in fact, the truth is our medical examiner secured this projectile, and it's been in evidence since. So this funeral home employee also made mention of not seeing muzzle burns. Well, I can say that the medical examiner did, in fact, report and notate in her documentation that there is sooting at this wound. So There's also mentionings from this funeral home employee that Heather was shot on the right side with some type of entrance as demonstrated from the right rear. We know that this is not true. There is no trauma in that region of Heather's head. We know that we have an entrance wound on the left side of the head, and the projectile was later recovered by the medical examiner. So this funeral home employee also makes mention of how the lead detective at the time mentioned to him that they could not find the bullet. This simply cannot be true as well, because our lead detective was fully aware that the medical examiner had located and recovered said projectile. So also I want to get into, there was mentionings from some social media sources that actions were not taken once this occurred, and I want to go ahead and get in front of that right now. As Sheriff Henson mentioned to the citizens, this case is very voluminous in nature. In summary, there are 19 volumes and growing to this case. So what I can say is the lead detective, along with other detectives, GBI agents, acting in concert, took this case very seriously, and many investigative actions were taken. Search warrants were applied for, and what I can say about that is I do understand that the public is not made aware of the contents of a file. We have to preserve the integrity of our investigations, and so what I can say is that I understand the concept of not knowing, but what I want to do is clarify today that to say that no actions were taken is simply not true. Many actions were taken. And so what I want to do right now is introduce cold case analyst Eddie Herman.
Thanks, Mike. Sheriff Henson. Prior to April of 2024, when Lieutenant Pat Banks reached out to me and asked if I would assist in a review of this case, I had never heard the name Heather Turner. I had not seen any news reports, watched any documentaries, podcasts, and no social media. We had a meeting on April 16th of 2024 with the command staff here in Paulding County, at Paulding County Sheriff's Office. I was emphatic in that meeting that I not receive any details of the investigation up to this time. I just wanted the basics: the victim, the location, the day and time of the incident. The idea with Lieutenant Banks and myself was to go into this unbiased and with a fresh set of eyes. We took the case file and a whiteboard, and we went to the second floor of the sheriff's office here, and we closed ourselves up in the office with the file. The next 6 weeks, we pored over hundreds of reports, investigative reports, crime scene reports, crime lab reports, records of phone calls, text messages. We spent 3 days breaking down the 911 call, which became very important in this case. What I found out about day 3 into our review was that 50% of what was in the case file had nothing to do with what happened on May the 4th, 2017. There were reports, hearsay, there were citizens that had contacted the investigators claiming to have information. Mainly it was rumors. And when the investigators would track down the source, sometimes 6, 7 individuals removed, that person would say, well, I didn't say that. I heard that from such and such. And so it's like a revolving door, and they're circling back. And the investigation, I can make this observation now, the investigation kind of got off track. So what Lieutenant Banks and I decided to do at the beginning of about the third week, we talked about it, and I said, let's go inside that bathroom of the house on Buck Trail where the incident occurred. Let's go inside the bathroom, not literally, physically, but through the case file. We'll go into the bathroom, close the door, and we will deal directly with the evidence as we see it, the direct evidence. Evidence that you can attach a fact to. All this other stuff was noise, and it didn't mean anything and didn't help us toward resolution. When we completed our review, there was a scheduled meeting on June 6, 2024 with the sheriff and his staff. We rolled the whiteboard into the meeting room, into the war room here at the sheriff's office, and before we did that, I asked Lieutenant Banks to write something on top of the board. And it was something I heard years ago when I was involved in a murder trial in Cobb County from a veteran prosecutor. He was making an argument to a jury, and he told them, don't check your common sense at the door. And I think that applies in this case. January 14, 2025, a couple of weeks after Sheriff Henson came into office, we had a meeting and we presented the case to him and his command staff. In the months following that, there was a review of the evidence. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation went to great lengths to go over the evidence with us. And one of the things that needed to be done in response to the meeting was we needed to have the note that was recovered at the scene analyzed. Now, this is the real world, it's not television. On television, everything gets analyzed. But in the real world, a lot of labs don't do handwriting analysis anymore. And the Georgia Crime Lab does not analyze handwriting, so the South Carolina Department of Law Enforcement agreed to take the case and look at it for us. Early January 2026, January 6th to be exact, GBI Special Agent Devin Evans and myself interviewed Andy Turner and Alexis Turner. We came away from and we discussed it, we came away from the interview feeling that they were as consistent with the account of what happened that morning as they were back in 2017. Let's move to the evidence, and I might point out some of the following slides are going to be graphic. This is a photograph of the x-ray taken at Heather Turner's autopsy. Now if you look, you can see the projectile on the right side of the head. Heather Turner had a contact range gunshot wound to the left side of the head. The projectile traveled virtually on a straight path and lodged where you see on the right side of the head in the photograph. There was soot present. This tells us, soot present at the entrance room. This tells us that the barrel of the revolver was close to the skin. The travel pattern of the bullet, the close contact are both consistent with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And I want to point out that the bullet was recovered at autopsy and is in evidence. When it comes to the weapon, the Airweight .38 revolver, Heather's DNA was recovered and identified on the trigger guard. It was the only DNA recovered off the gun. Heather Turner's hands tested positive for gunshot residue. The results of Andy's test, the GSR test, was negative. As it relates to the note found, as mentioned by Captain Hill, found at the scene, the note and the pen. SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, confirmed that the handwriting is Heather Turner's. You can see in this photograph we have a 90-degree blood drop on the right knee, virtually straight down. This tells us that when the shot was fired, Heather Turner was in the squatting position. And that's amplified in the photographs Captain Hill showed of the blood. All of the blood is low. So she's squatting when the gun is fired. Her hands, Heather Turner's hands, tell us a lot. They speak volumes in this case. If you look at the right hand, there's high velocity blood spatter on the back of the hand. You have some transfer around the fingers. If you go to the left hand, you see the void up near the thumb on the top of the hand. In the palm of the left hand, you see the void. You could take the Airweight .38 pistol and put it in that void. All said, the evidence is sound, and this is direct physical evidence. This has not changed in the years since this happened. Witness statements, memories, that can be affected, but this has not changed. It tells us that Heather squatted against that bathroom door. She had the pistol in her left hand, gripped in her left hand. She brings it up, and she supports the left hand with the right hand. That's why you have the void. That's why you have the void on the top of the left hand. And you have the spatter on the top of the right hand because the blowback takes the right hand. Let me close by saying this is tragic. It's a very sad case. Investigative mistakes were made. Now, I've been in this business over 40 years. I can't count the times that a review was done on one of my cases where some things were pointed out, some mistakes were made. And I'd look at it and I'd say, how did I miss that? Or I should have done that. It made me a better investigator. In August of 2025, I accepted an offer from Sheriff Henson to join the cold case unit out here in Paulding County. In that time that I've been here, Sheriff Henson has initiated advanced training in the area of crime scene response and investigation. The sheriff and his command staff, and I bear witness to this, they've assembled a great team of investigators out here. They do good work. I can assure you that this agency is light years away from 2017. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the sheriff.
I think it's important to note a couple things from what Mr. Herman stated. Was he was initially involved in this case beginning back in 2024 prior to my time as sheriff. He and Lieutenant Banks' findings were not made, I was not made aware of them until I became the sheriff. And so I can tell you what we've done since January 1st, 2025, and that is work diligently to get to this day. This is a day that I promised to our community, and the day is here. And with that being said, we remained in constant communication with the family. I personally have been in contact with them, as well as Captain Hill and many other men and women at the sheriff's office. We understand it's taken a long time, but for us, I don't think 13 months is too long to wait to get the proper and true resolution to this case. I want to read you the amendment from the autopsy report from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab. It reads, "This report replaces the autopsy report dated 8/15/2017 in its entirety. This case report is amended on January 30th, 2026 to reflect a change in manner of death from undetermined to suicide. This amendment reflects evidence presented by Paulding County law enforcement and GBI earlier on this date and is consistent with the autopsy finding." Heather's death has been ruled a suicide. As of today, this case is closed. I hope the community, I hope the family, the friends, and everyone out there can find closure, as can we, because this has been one of the most difficult cases we have ever worked in the entirety of the Paulding County Sheriff's Office. I think it's important to note that without the hard work of the men and women of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the Paulding County Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, our cold case unit, SLED, we would not be here today. But I think it's very important to note that we wanted to make sure that we looked under every stone and make sure we double-checked and triple-checked before we came to you, our community, and gave you the resolution today. Now, I know this is not going to be a popular decision. I know you're probably out there, there's people probably out there online saying it's a bunch of BS, it's not true. But I'm telling you right now, the facts are the facts, and you don't get any better than Lieutenant Banks and Eddie Herman and Mike Hill. And the evidence tells us exactly what happened. I think it's important to remember Heather as the wonderful person that she was, remember the good times, and allow her memory to live on. It's important for closure for the community and for this family. And with that, I appreciate everyone's support. I appreciate everyone's patience. At this time, this case is closed. If anyone from the media has any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them at this time. Yes, sir.
Sheriff, have you been in contact with Heather's family, and what have they said to you?
Yeah, great question. So for the audience, I don't know if you can hear the question, but the question was, have we been in contact with the family? Yes, so we invited the family to come in this afternoon to meet with us prior to this news conference. They declined. I told them that they had an opportunity to meet with us, and they declined. And so, unfortunately, we have not been able to discuss this with them until they're seeing this online now. We had a meeting set, and they canceled earlier this afternoon. So it's unfortunate that they didn't attend, but I hope they can find closure as we can as well.
Do you have an indication as to what their response is to this?
No, sir, I don't. The question was, do we have any indication of what their response is? This case has been ongoing for 8.5 years. We do understand that there are many people that don't think that it was a suicide. But the facts in the case, and this is one thing I will take to my grave, the facts in this case have not changed in 8.5 years. They simply have not. What has changed is the perpetuation of falsities in this case. We have followed the facts, our detectives have followed the facts, and we are here today giving you, our community, the facts.
Sheriff, given the fact that this case is almost 9 years old, and given sort of the clarity that you've given of the facts as you've concluded, to what extent does it make sense or not make sense that it took this long?
Yeah, I mean, so the question is, does it make sense that it took this long, bearing the facts in mind? I've only been the sheriff for 13 months. I can't speak for the previous administration, but I can tell you that this was a top priority of mine when I came into office. And 13 months later, we're delivering a resolution in this case. It may not be popular, but this is what happened on May the 4th, 2017, and these are the facts.
Sheriff, there are a lot of speculations, a lot of inaccuracies going on around this case. When you think about all the speculation and inaccuracies around this case and how it may have interfered with the case, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the issues was prior to my administration, there really was not a whole lot of public information released about this case. And so as a former public information officer, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, if you don't release accurate, proper, factual information, the perpetuation of misinformation will prevail. and that is the epitome of what happened in this case. Misinformation has prevailed. It has precipitated itself into perceived fact. And folks, you saw today the facts. It can't get any more clear with high velocity blood spatter on the right hand, a void in the left hand, a void on top of the left hand, and the low-lying spatter on the walls. Folks, the walls weren't wiped. The bullet was in her skull. There is so much misinformation, and I wish that we could have told our community and the world this information before, but I wasn't the sheriff then, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but I'm the sheriff now, and by God, this is the way it is, and these are the facts, and this case is closed. And I pray for this family every day for the hell they've been put through for 8.5 years.
Have you been in contact with Andy or his family?
We have. So as Mr. Herman explained, he and Agent Evans with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation interviewed Mr. Turner and his daughter. That's one of the things that people were up in arms about, that there was never an interview completed. In our administration, our cold case analysts, Mr. Herman and Agent Evans, interviewed Mr. Turner. So we literally went through this entire case from the very beginning to the very end, and that's how we came to this conclusion.
Sheriff, how active is this cold case unit going to remain going forward after this big one?
Yeah, great question. So our cold case unit is very active. We are actually working on the conclusion of another old cold case that we're excited about releasing information on. But they are very active, and this is vital. And analyst Eddie Herman stated it perfectly. We have these gentlemen who come in with no prior knowledge of these incidents, these cases, and so they come in essentially blind, and they look at the facts. And I think that's what's most important that I want everybody to leave here understanding, is that you have to look at the facts. You can't look at what somebody said online. You can't look at what you heard. You have to look at what the facts show you, and that's what these gentlemen did.
And why was this case such a priority for you when you took office? Why did you want to rush headlong into investigating this cold case?
Well, we've got quite a few cold cases, and they're all a top priority, but this one took a special place for me because it had such a community outcry of why. Why is it taking so long? What's going on? Why are we not getting any information? And I think it's vital to the citizens of our community. They need to know. Our administration, our sheriff's office, we want to be transparent with our community. And so it was vital to our success to get a resolution to this community.
Thank you, Sheriff.
As we close, thank you to our community for watching. Thank you to our community for the support. Please, if you need anything from the Paulding County Sheriff's Office, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and God bless.